Okay, Matthew's not here, but let's call the meeting to order. First, agenda item is review of the minutes. I believe it was November 29th. Are there any comments?
Yes, there are.
Let's also put the date. So the date of this hearing presently is December 20th, 2023. This is the Nagog Orchard Ad-Hoc Working Committee. So up first, a review of the documents.
All right, so one of the things I noticed is when we talk about the RFI,
Which is on page 2.
which is on page 2, yep, so the town, we were asking if the town could provide funding for running ads. There was a little bit of a typo there. Approval for 500 should have been 5,000. On that. That is all I have. The rest looked okay. So we need to change that from 500 to 5,000.
Got it. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, so do I have a motion to change as amended, to approve as amended?
Yes.
So we're changing the ask for the town from 500 to 5,000 for advertising.
So I make a motion to change the approval for advertising for 500 to 5,000.
I'll second that.
Any
Okay.
any seconds?
Yeah.
She just seconded.
Yep.
Yeah.
Seconds.
All
So
in
now we
favor?
just need to do a roll call vote.
I'll do the roll call vote. Sarah Seward present, as I, Brad Mitchell,
Here.
Jen Clancy,
Here.
Amy Tarlow Lewis,
Here.
Karen Morrison.
Aye.
Aye. So what you want to do, so you're present, so you're either going to vote for the minutes or not. So Brad, are you in support?
Yes.
Jen Clancy?
Sharon, go last. Though.
Yep, yeah, and Amy.
Yes.
Perfect, so the motion carries as unanimous.
Okay, next item is the update on the presentation in the orchard tour. I'm sorry I couldn't make it. I had a bunch of stuff to do before I travel. You want anybody go over that? Lessons learned? What do we need to do next?
Yeah, so I'm happy to go first. So I had done the presentation and I think it went well. I think we had just under 50 people who attended. I think once that people really understood that if the land is sold, the APR stays with the land and it won't go into development. And I think that you kind of see the crowd just kind of relax a lot. I think, you know, we saw and we've heard and seen before that people are just like frustrated with the current condition of the orchard.
As we all are.
Yeah, and the lack of the town oversight and management of that property since the beginning. I think people got a much better understanding of the complexities of the problems that, you know, there's different pieces of land. You know, there's APR land, there's conservation land, there's general use land. The house and the barn sit within the APR, but they're not part of the APR, and that brings its own complexities. You know, the conditions of the house and the property, you know, add, you know, other complexities to starting a business on that property. And there's just so many layers to it. And I think people really got a much better understanding of the bigger picture and all the pieces that we're trying to juggle. One of the things that I think people were surprised about and would like to move forward with, probably with the FinCom, is to start putting money in as a line item in the town budget to care for the orchard in some way, whether it's the buildings, or the property. You know, again, if we don't know if it's going to be sold or leased, so I don't know how the town FinCom would go about determining how much and for what, since
It seems like we have two issues. One, we've got an interim period because we know we're probably not going to be doing anything with it for several months and it still needs that upkeep. And then the long term, we're still not sure where we're going until the RFI is done and we see the interest, whether we're selling it or leasing, lease to own, those are all options. If we keep it, we've got to figure that out. If we sell it, it shouldn't be as an issue, an issue. But that part's too early, but I do think there's some maintenance issues that need to be taken care of. I think we've been doing a lot of that and talking about it here. And I know you said somebody brought up the condition of the house. We've been talking about that. Actually, I went to meet the appraiser along with Sarah. The house is not as bad as I thought it was. It's bad. It was probably bad before the flood, but it was bad. It's relatively dry in there, so I don't think it's immediate, but, I do think we need to get somebody in there to see what we do to remediate it so it doesn't get worse. But I had this vision of dripping walls and mold and everything else, and it's not good, but it's not as horrendous as I thought it was based on descriptions.
Yeah, and I think Matt got an estimate for $35,000 to remove asbestos from the house.
That was an approximate, right?
Approximately, and I don't know where the asbestos is in the house. Is it in the floor and the tiles?
I mean, it could be
Obviously,
any,
that'll be in the minutes, maybe Matt can share that.
it could be in a number of places, it could be in insulation, it could be in the floor tiles, which isn't usually as big an issue. It could be in the plaster, which is probably needs to come out most of it anyhow, but those are all options. Speaking of which, when we did the walkthrough, I did see what you were talking about in the cold storage, controlled atmosphere. So there's a spray-on material there. It wasn't the piping. I'm guessing it's not asbestos, but just based on when I think it was put in, but we should test it. School department has to test for asbestos under federal law, and they probably have a contractor who does this.
Yeah,
But you need to have somebody who knows how to sample it and all that kind of stuff, but they probably only need one sample. I don't think it is, but that spray-on stuff is, and it's pretty friable. It's gonna become airborne. They had actually repaired some of it where they hit the post. So I don't think it's asbestos, but you can't tell till you test it, so it's worth taking a test.
yeah. Right, and, yeah, so I think those were sort of like the major sort of themes that I heard. I think it was hard for people to hear and still kind of understand that even if they see trees and they see trees with leaves and there were a few apples, that it's not a viable crop. There's not enough yield coming off these trees to like run a commercial business off of it.
Right.
So.
And the tree seems to be a question. So I'll offer my perspective on the trees where they have a number of issues. The first one is that they're very old. And that comes with most of them are very old. That comes with two problems. One is they're varieties that people don't necessarily want anymore. There's newer varieties, Honeycrisp, Cosmic Crisp, all that stuff that people look for. And you're just not going to cut it even with a pick your own orchard with Cortlands and Macintosh anymore. The second is with the age, they're not as productive as they should be. They've also been neglected, and while you can still bring them back, giving everything, or not all of them, I don't believe you can bring back the fire blight ones. But the amount of effort you put in and money to bring them back, you're still gonna have a low yield from varieties you don't really want. And the third one I'd say is almost every orchard I know is moving towards called orchard architecture, those guys where instead of having these big rambling trees like we used to, they're high density, they're low, and that's largely for labor and for yield. Because it's a lot of labor to pick apples in those old trees. You get those terraces, you've seen the ones,
Yeah.
It's much cheaper and much easier, and labor is probably the biggest challenge a lot of farms have, particularly where you have to pick by hand. So I know that's been a question, but maybe we'll get somebody who thinks they can make something of it, but I would doubt their.
Yeah.
Right. Carlson's a good example of that, what they've done in the last 30 years. And
Yeah.
Shoalin Farms that Amy and I went to visit had both traditional orchard and they had all their newer trees were
Yeah.
find out like that.
And Carlson, and they've been slowly switching over, right? They may even have some of the old ones, but a lot of it's just labor.
But we're also talking about trees that are in excess of 30 years old.
Yeah,
So,
as I said, they're old and they're old varieties,
Yeah.
so. It's up to somebody else, so they want to put the effort to put an orchard in there or something else or some combination. We'll see what we get for the RFI, but that is kind of the background. I know some people have suggested we keep the trees. We've had experts come in from UMass. Local orchards have also tell us that basically the trees we have is shit. So.
Do you have any other comments on your presentations?
No, I thought we got a lot of good questions. I thought people were pretty passionate. And I think a lot of them ended up going on the walk. That was good.
Good.
So, the weather was not in our favor. It was, very wet, very windy, and so we had a lot of good troopers though. We started with quite a few. We didn't end with as many, but, yeah, I think there were over 30. We met at the top barn. And then carried on through a few blocks, came back and then went to the lower area. People were disappointed. Obviously, they were bummed they weren't able to go in the buildings, but they understood. We were able to take a visual peek from the outside, the conditions of the top farm stands. But I think what was most profound is that people get to see truly with their own eyes the really poor condition of the trees. And most, I think, overwhelming is also the invasives as well. So it was nice. Jen kind of brought up the rear for the people that were slower, but it was really not ideal conditions. But a lot of people had really great questions. A lot of them were just reiterating what Amy had talked about in her presentation, that things just are not viable, and they were actually able to see that. So I think that was great. People, as always, were just at the very end appreciative, but also asking how they can help as well.
Good.
So I think it was well received.
Great. I'm glad people understand that, you know, any talk of selling it may or may not happen, but it stays in agriculture. I think that was a lot of the opposition when that came up before. The more people understand that, I think the better off we are. Okay, moving on, we had some discussion, onto discussion. There was an email from one of you guys about comments about improving public notice and what we could do about that. I think Vin Stolo's doing a good job with the neighbors. He's been very open to adding people to it. Don, I know you had concerns. You think it's our role. We're all volunteers here. If we can get a neighbor who wants to volunteer and help out, I'm going to take it. So Vin's doing a good job on the mailing list. If anybody else wants to be on the mailing list, let me know. I'll see if Vin can get it. We'll put him on there. I'm sure he will. He's put other people on there. Amy's done a great job putting this together, so the Zoom is a little bit more organized and professional.
Zoom and the video, and it's all integrated together.
But also, Karen, do you want to talk in terms of the help that you're doing on the website and links to make it a little bit easier to find?
Oh, yeah. So if anybody in the future wants to look for the Littleton Nagog Orchard Working Group Committee, I think I missed an Ad-Hoc in there too somewhere. But at any rate, it's I made a shortcut, so it's available at bit.ly Nagog-Orchard. And that's all you need to type in, and that'll get you straight there. I spent a little bit of time trying to find it a while back, and it was a frustrating process. So hopefully that'll help get folks over to the website quickly and without any trouble.
It would be nice to make sure it's referenced in these minutes so that if someone has yet to find the shortcut and they read previous minutes, they'll be able to find it. So just keep letting people know.
Yeah, and that's another thing that, just to jump back to the presentation, that's another thing, just a side conversation I've had with people is if you go to the agendas and you scroll through it, you'll see all the attachments behind it. But I think people are looking for like a more direct links, so they're not like scrolling through all the agendas trying to find this map or that map. I don't know if there's some like base documents that we can put up there in addition to what we already have.
I think we can, Karen, maybe you and I can look at the structure of that, because we do that for conservation. So if there's a project, you can see the important items that are in that as well.
I think at least the map of what the APR land would probably be of interest to people as opposed to the other stuff.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on public notice?
Just one idea, yeah, if you're continuing the way you are, it sounds you are going to then, if you want to send something to just one address, what you should do to make sure it follows through and the person then, you know, gets to see it is add your name to the list. So you get feedback and you know that people have been notified.
Well, I'd have to ask Vin to do
Oh, I
that,
see.
but, you know, but we can do that.
Yeah, it's several links. Want to make sure it really gets through to people. The best way to do is having your name there so you find out as well.
I would also point, aside from this, and most boards don't have a mailing list or anything like that. You go to the website and you look. So it is up there. It's hard to find, but we've gone above and beyond with the website. So, I mean, with a mailing list, I think. So it's a good thing to do. I'm happy we're doing it, but.
But also, if you're going to post up on your page, when will the video of the meeting that we had, the briefing meeting, be posted?
So I had returned the camera on Tuesday after the meeting, and Mike already has it up on Littleton Community TV.
Okay.
And I had sent an email to Matthew and Karen asking if they could ask the appropriate person within the town to post it, and Matthew said that he would. And I'm guessing by your comment is that it's not on the Nagog Working Committee page.
No, I'm looking right now. It's not there yet.
Okay, would you be able to just post it, Karen?
We
Like,
can't post directly to the site. We have to go through the webmaster, but we can do that. So
Yeah,
I
just know
can,
that's busy, so.
yep.
Well, maybe you could prod them. I'm sure they have other boards they're dealing with and they're busy, but they'll get it up when they can. If we need to remind them.
Yeah, no, I can send it over and you know, never hurts to ask twice. If it's already done, that's no big deal.
Okay, next on the agenda is the RFI, and Karen, could you give us an update on where we are?
Sure. I apologize for the late email, but hopefully everyone on the committee was able to get the documents that I sent out a little bit ago. If not, they're in your inbox. So what I sent over was the attorney's comments to the RFI and some additional notes that I put in. The attorney's comments were minimal, really. So mostly it's just discussion points that we have to work through.
Karen, do you have
pulling
an
it up myself.
opportunity that you can post that so that we can go through that? Because I know there was good enough that they printed this. I didn't know that this came, and I don't know if Will's had a chance to read it. But do you want to?
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
Want to go through line items?
Yeah,
You said
yep,
there's not
yep.
much.
No, there isn't. So the first question was whether the second barn and the cottage were included in the APR. The good news is that Brad got that negative answer from DAR, and town council also gave me a negative answer, so everyone's in agreement on that.
So the barn and the cottage are not part of the APR.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's good or bad, but yeah.
Well,
it
it's
is-
good that
it's good that we
they're in
know what it
agreement.
is.
Right, yeah.
The nightmare scenario was that we got two different answers. So.
I do feel badly we had to drive the appraiser through there since he didn't.
No, I think it's good. He might know somebody interested in the lease.
No, it was a waste of his time, but that's okay. So Karen, what else do you need from us on this?
Sure. So I'm just going to go through the comments real quick for the benefit of everybody who wasn't able to see them. The second question from Jenny Merrill was that lot 107 were not offered for lease, the forested portions. And the town council thought we might want to talk about why. When I was looking into lot 107, it's about 20 acres total. And it is, as far as I can tell, has no restrictions. It's over at 94 Nagog Hill Road. So that's where I think where the barn and the cottage are, but the council wondered if the forested portions we might want to include those in the lease. Because I think they have no restrictions and they're only subject to a general municipal purposes zoning. I don't think that's particularly in our interest, but I'm happy to entertain other opinions, of course.
If I may, and I think Karen, you're aware of this, 2015, we took the town vote Article 8. So the lower portion of lot 107 adjacent to the Nagog Water is under conservation. It's not on record, but it was voted, has yet to be done through the recording. But Charles did use, so part of that lease, he did use that back shed, which is dilapidated, and used it for storage, because that's where also the water, that portion on the left has the barn, the cottage, the irrigation well. So I would think that we would put that as part of the lease.
So
As an option, but
here-
you cannot use the
Yeah.
section on the right.
couple things, all of that's dilapidated. None of that's any good. None of that equipment back there is any
No, I'm
good.
not referring to the equipment,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the property.
Right,
The actual
but
part.
the equipment goes with the property, so I'm not sure anybody, my suggestion would be on this, that we need to focus on the APR property. We have a legal obligation to that, get up in funding. Have they put the restriction on that parcel yet?
The restriction is on, the town voted for it in 2015, Article 8, so.
That doesn't necessarily mean they did it,
Well,
though.
there's a plan in that, so conservation.
Okay, but it needs a deeded restriction on there, so, and we need to know what they are to even know if we,
Question, it's not restricted at the present time, but
Okay.
Charles did not use that land either.
okay. So, I mean, we would need to
So,
know whether the restriction even allows for ag, some do, some don't, as you know. Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
No, that's
So
okay.
we-
It's just that I included a copy of the town report from 2015, and Article 8 was about the lease. It doesn't cover any conservation restrictions.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, so my suggestion anyway is we need to focus on the APR. We've got a number of parcels around it which could be leased. I'll be honest, I think anybody taking over the APR is gonna have their hands full to begin with.
What
I think-
are they gonna use?
Can I finish? I think probably maybe the preferred approach would be, can we basically leave those open to lease if people have an interest down the line, but focus on the APR? Because that's a lot of work. Now, they come in and say, yeah, we really want that parcel, it's open, but there's a lot of land there. And it's all been neglected, and anybody coming in is gonna have their hands full of the stuff that we need to get up in agriculture. So I think we should leave where the restrictions allow, leave it open for a potential lease to whoever comes in, whether they be a lessor or a new owner. But I think we need to focus, my suggestion would be we focus on the
What
APR.
do you mean by focus on the APR land as opposed to identifying that as auxiliary use land for land that's for storage, for
So
that it does have a benefit and a value to
Right.
the other APR land?
Some of it is just,
I'm not
buffer.
saying,
Right.
yes,
No, and that's my point though, is we need to get the APR under production and worked, and we can leave it open that somebody can come in and lease the other land as well and leave it open, but somewhere we should be really focusing on the APR and leaving the other stuff where the restrictions allow open for lease if we're willing to do so, and it seems like we should.
But what barn are they gonna use? So there's no barn, neither of the barns are in APR.
Correct. So what we had talked about, again, if it's a sale, we're gonna put the house in the upper barn as part of it. And we've been talking about how to get that as part of the APR or equally restricted, but for now, I would suggest the upper barn and the house. But let's see what we get for an RFI, what we get for responses, but the land is what we really need to get. The APR is what we need, and somebody may come in and say, I don't need a house or barn, I'm gonna do hay.
So Karen, can you clarify for us, is any of the lower land on lot 107 offered in this RFI?
No, it is not as currently drafted.
Okay.
So
That's
I
the
do think it's
question,
worth
is whether we
mentioning
wanna
that there is
include
other
it.
land that might be open for lease. If somebody's looking for more land or doing something, I think they're gonna have their hands full with the APR land, but.
as long as we're not restricted, as long as you're not, restricting it or cutting it out of the possibility.
No, and if you look at,
Whoever the response to the RFI is really gonna have to understand the whole property in order to respond to the
Right.
RFI.
But is it mentioned in this RFI is my question, because I just got the edits. Karen, does it mention that it could be available?
No,
So we're not,
no, that's what I just addressed. It is not in there. If we want it in there, we need to add it and we need to be specific about how much we're adding and what the terms are if we're adding it. Or even if we want to include a maybe in there, we still need to be specific. Are we including all 20 acres?
no.
Or are we just including, half of that?
well, my suggestion would be, let's list the parcels that we'd be open to leasing and let them make a proposal as part of the RFI. Karen, I sent you a link to New England Farmland Finders.
Uh-huh.
And they've got, if you look at some of their postings, they've got somewhere, 30 acres for sale, an additional 10 acres for lease, and some of the descriptions, you can probably handle it, but they do have some of that. But it seems that, I agree with Sarah, we should be listing the parcels that we'd be open to leasing. Do we even know what those are?
No, I mean, right now, you guys have all seen this. I'm sort of surprised at this point that we're talking about setting up two different sets of parcel, one for lease and one for sale, because that was not the terms of this RFI.
No, that's not what I'm talking about, but there's land there where you can't sell that adjoins the APR, right? That we can offer for lease, that we may want to offer for lease to make sure it gets used. Versus listing it all, the other thing we could say is there's adjacent parcels with conservation restrictions that may be open for lease and call for more information, because I don't think there's gonna be that many people interested in them at this point. But that's just a suggestion.
What is the concern over the specificity of what is listed with those parcels? As opposed to just kind of mentioning them in the way that Brad is suggesting.
I don't think there's any, I can run it by council. I don't think there's any legal issue. Again, this is an RFI, but I'm not sure that I think it's terribly helpful for folks to hear that there's some conservation land nearby that they might want to look into and perhaps lease. I mean, I think we're trying to help get as many responses as possible. It just doesn't seem as user friendly to me. But if you think that the folks who are going to be responding to this are well versed in that kind of, aside.
Well, I'm just trying to think of the workload and getting it out the door. I mean, Sarah, do you have a
Yeah.
list of the parcels that we'd be up for leasing?
So we have that map that Ryan used for the last lease, and that lists, let's see, that lists
Out of the presentation.
4 acres, not part of the APR, the self-help parcel. Let's see, it includes areas around and including the fruit stand, warehouse, and storage, excludes the rear wetland area. Okay. I wonder if I can share screen and show you guys what I'm looking at here. This is
If I can
the,
share, I'm gonna try to share my screen.
And make your
Okay,
address
perfect.
administrator.
Karen, can we just, and this is something that I hadn't seen for a while until I saw the map that Ryan was using. It's excluding what they're calling wetlands. That back area is currently in tree. So in terms of fruit trees, a wetland swath comes through, but the whole back area is not excluded. That's in ag. So I'm curious how we came up with this boundary that Ryan drew in there, because the yellow portion is APR.
Karen, I've also made you co-host, so if you can throw that
Okay.
up.
I have not found Ryan's maps to be helpful. They've actually added a lot of
That's why
confusion to
I asked
things.
you to take them out of the presentation,
Yeah.
because I found them inaccurate.
So Karen, I know you're pulling up your screen, but so we've got a couple options. We can list the parcels in some detail, which could be open for lease if somebody were interested. We could just say that they're open there. There may be a happy medium in saying, there are several parcels totaling XX acres that may be open for lease. Some of it's wooded, some of it's overgrown meadow. I don't, what's your preference? You have more experience in RFRs and RFIs than the rest of us.
Of the fields.
honestly, I can do whatever we want us to do. I just need to know what we want to do and probably get some help with getting the right terms in there or getting the right land identified.
I think one map
But-
that we consistently come back to is the one that was used for ag. In terms of how the fields were numbered and what their yields were. And we can take that map and then you can refer to which one are specific APR lots, but that's a really good map.
You're not talking about the USDA one.
Yes, the field maps.
Yeah.
That's a really good map.
So Sarah, can I ask this of you? Since you understand the maps better, you like that one, can you list the number of parcels and the acreage in each parcel?
Then it's not gonna correspond to the other map.
The USDA map.
Right.
Karen, I don't know how easy it is for you to pull up the USDA map that was in my presentation.
I don't either, but let me look.
Because we go round and round maps, and I thought Brad's wording was pretty good on there's other parcels that may be available.
Right.
Leave it at that.
Well, what's the preference? How much specificity do we want in the RFI as a group?
I'd like to be able to get it done tonight, and if there's a way to be somewhat vague, that there's other buildings and other lands that might be available for lease.
Contact us for more
Okay.
information.
Yeah.
So something along the
We'll have
lines
someone
of,
that magically shows up and wants to do a walkthrough. can
Yeah,
show
we'll
them
do it.
The other land. So as Will said, some people just need storage, and that backwooded area is not gonna be done for anything, and, if you need to store things there off season.
Are you comfortable with that, Karen?
so are we just referencing surrounding land in conservation?
But I think
May be
Karen,
available.
it's the line that we struck in red under description of property where it says a second barn and small cottage and a portion of the residential home. So it is still all of that and a little bit more land as well. But if we could take that and put it in the may be available option, I think I'd be very agreeable to that.
Okay, for lease only though,
Not
right?
for purchase. but
Not
that
for
would be
sale.
a lease. Yeah, not for sale,
Potential lease.
right,
And I use the word potential because we
Yeah.
gotta see what they want to do with it too. It's not a wide open.
right.
Are we good?
Yep.
That's page one. That's
All right.
page one.
Okay. So, let's see, moving on to other comments from council. Okay, so the next comment is regarding timing and what council's recommendations were or comments were about timing. She suggested we leave it open for 30 to 60 days. But if we are, depending on what our RFP target date is, that might, be cutting it too close for us to be able to turn around an RFP in time. So that's why I added a timeline to the agenda for this evening, is so that we can talk about what our goals are for timing. And maybe we need to work our way backwards into how long we keep the RFI open from there.
Yeah. So the only thing I'd add to
And
that, my experience in these kind of things, because it's a special type of person who responds to these, they could have had, is that a lot of it's word of mouth. So if we err on leaving it open longer, I think that's in our best interest. With that said, I understand there's competing interests and timelines for getting an RFI out as well, but 30 days will be minimum, and I wouldn't include over the holidays, which doesn't look like we're gonna get that done anyway, so.
So would you feel comfortable with like 45 days?
Yeah, 45 days I think is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we are all under the understanding that no one's gonna be ready to farm it this summer, like it's just not gonna be farmed.
Yeah, no, we're gonna miss this season.
Sure, and the farming is certainly one timeline to consider. The other timelines, though, are annual and special town meeting dates. Depending on what we get back, if we have a lease where the select board is authorized to go forward. If we're talking about a sale, then we're going to have to go through town meeting, and we wouldn't want to find that out. A week after a special town meeting or annual town meeting, right?
Right.
Is the RFP timeframe guidelines the same as a RFI, that 45 days, or is it?
Yeah, I would think of the minimums 30, and then we can move up from there as much as we want.
Yeah.
But I think RFPs can turn around as probably, if it's similar to federal, it could be as quickly as 2 weeks, but I don't think that serves any of our interests.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
But-
the RFP is pretty in-depth. They have to produce financial
Yeah.
documents. So
We
there'll
want
be
to
time.
give people time to respond with the detail we need too, so.
So if we open it on January 1st, it would go till the middle of February
Yeah.
for the RFI.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Karen, when do you think we might post this? What's a realistic date?
I think we can probably have it done to post in early January, assuming that we can come to agreement on the additional lease language quickly, which I think we can.
Okay, so outside, this will suggest, and let's say March 1st, it'll probably be middle of February. That closes. We need time to review it. When's special town meeting? Or when's the town meeting? Again, we may not bring it to sell, but if we do. May, okay.
Early May.
Okay, so say May 1. 30 days. Yeah, that's cutting it pretty tight. Is there a
Because
later,
the
is
warrant
there a later
closes
town
as
meeting
well.
we can do this at?
No,
I mean,
it would be fall.
Well, that
The
might,
next one would be, the next scheduled one would be fall. If we need to call a special town meeting, that's something that can be discussed. It's at a cost, but so is inaction.
so,
So consecutively, while we're waiting for the RFI, we still have to work on the language for the RFP. Because that's labor intensive in terms, because we don't want to use what we used prior, because as we know, that
That's
didn't,
too wordy.
it was too wordy and it didn't produce anything. So we still have to, we can't wait
Right.
and then stop, start. So I was really hoping that we would come to agreement tonight so that we really this would get posted at the very end of the holidays, so that way.
I think we're largely in agreement on the RFI.
Yeah, if you guys
but-
are okay with it, I can finalize it with, town council.
Yeah, I mean, if you put that generic
If you guys
language that
wanna-
we agreed upon for the CRs, then I think we're good. I think, but I mean, it's still, say that brings us up to, February 15th, that gives us 2.5 months to review it, put the RFR out together, get everybody prepared and educate by special town meeting. That's cutting it very close, I think.
Right, because the warrant closes well ahead of May,
Right.
so,
Shoot for it.
Then we lose a whole nother.
Right, we've got to shoot
We
for
got
it.
it.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah,
I'd
I
agree.
think we
Let's
should try.
change this. We've done this half-assed many times before. I'd almost rather take the time and do it right.
Then we have to understand who's gonna take care of the property, how much money the town's gonna put in while we're waiting a whole other season.
Well, realistically,
Doing the upkeep and all of that.
we're not gonna get somebody in there for the summer anyhow, so we're gonna be stuck with it anyway.
Maybe we have an opportunity for, well, we can't do that. Can't have somebody that's very interested in what I'll start doing, I think.
Well, here's a question. I mean, is special town meeting, is that completely unreasonable for this?
I don't think so. I
You
mean,
also get people to focus on it
that
as
and
well.
$6 will get you a cup of coffee, but I don't think so.
Yeah. I hate to rush it. We've done this poorly before as a town, and rushing it isn't gonna add to the integrity of this process.
I think once we start factoring in that there's a lot we can do for the RFP, and that's a really good point during the RFI process that we can get on drafting. There's a certain amount though, and a significant amount I think that we can't. So a lot, there's whether the RFP is for leasing or for selling or for both is,
So how about we do this?
is a big lift.
Why don't we put it out as early in January as we can, give it 40 days, we'll try to make that town meeting and we'll play it by ear as it goes along and we see what we have.
Yeah,
I mean, we
I
can
think
do
we
it.
should
I'd
move
love
as
to do
quickly
it
as we
sooner.
can. Yeah,
If it looks like, some of it's been on who we get in and how much review is done and how they look and whether it's a lease, so let's tentatively shoot for the goal of having it ready for that May 1st town meeting, but realize that we may need to step back if it becomes more complicated than we hope it will be.
Yeah, and I think what happened last time is, the lawyers just took so much time with it, that really was what slowed it up. And so I think a lot of that front work has already been done. But I think, from our experience, we're looking to sort of cut back some of the language and simplify the language. So I don't know if we're gonna sort of come to some sort of bumping of the heads when we submit a new edition to the lawyers, if they're gonna push back on us on.
No, I understand, but it's also predicated upon getting good people responding to both the RFI and the RFR.
Right.
And that takes time, and it takes time for them to prepare a decent proposal.
yeah.
And that's where I think we've maybe dropped the ball as a town before, and not getting those good proposals and restricting that time. But I'm willing to play it by ear. If we can do it and just work a little harder, that's cool.
So,
Theoretically,
I
the
guess-
RFI response is going to be roll into the RFP, so a portion of their RFP response is going to be built on the RFI.
Yeah, and we may get somebody who looks really good and wants to lease it, in which case town meetings move.
right.
So let's. Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just gonna say, since I know we're shooting for May and I think that, that makes sense. I think if we're not, since we're not sure we're gonna make May, we might want to talk, a little bit more about, how much money we think we would need in the budget to be able to take care of the orchard in the meantime. If we think it's gonna be even an extent. And
I think we need to do that
unfortunately,
anyway,
budget season has already started.
So
So we would want to
trains of
get started
thought.
on that quickly.
Right, and yeah, the timing is always apparent, but, so we either consistently do nothing and maintain, and the only maintenance we've done this past year is mowing. So you've got status quo, or you
Yep.
actually have the ones where people are gonna make a few improvements or actually start to address the property. So we have to you have to determine what the appetite is for the budget.
So from what I'm
Well-
hearing, we're thinking at least 35,000 for mitigation. That's sort of
That's just the house, yeah.
right. And so that's a minimum at this point, right?
So I think we need to do the house. Beyond that, my suggestion would be, let's do status quo and keep it mowed, and so it's not an eyesore for the neighbors, and, Sarah, I'll take your suggestions on the invasives, we can still cut them back, but since we don't, somebody may come in and say, I'm gonna do it, hey, and come through and just bulldoze the whole thing and put down, and I'm not saying that's gonna happen, I think somebody called their senator and said that was gonna happen, these are theoreticals for folks, but for us to plan and maintain this orchard, to have somebody come and rip it out to put in a hayfield is kind of moot, so my suggestion is, other than not letting the house deteriorate further, and not letting it become an eyesore and a nuisance to the neighbor, that we try to maintain, we try to maintain status quo.
So one of the hearings, we discussed, the top farm stand needs help in order for it still to be a farm stand through the next couple windstorms. And Karen, I think you mentioned there's a new person in town that's gonna be charged of overseeing buildings. So that building is
Hopefully.
now falling for repair. We have a tree on the front yard of the house, which the storm the last couple of days has toppled over. So we have to understand what we're going to do here. We have window panes that are
Yeah.
falling out. So,
So does it make sense to make this the number one agenda item for the next meeting and put together a comprehensive list of what we want to do, rather than kind of doing it off the cuff
budget
now?
wise, Karen, I thought we already had to have money in already. What's the time frame for FinCom?
No, there's time. There's time. Right now, Town Hall is working on their budget for the operational, but I think we've got some time, and we're not asking for millions. So I think we can bring something forward after we meet again.
So why don't we make that an agenda item for the next one, and, Sarah, you're up there, look around, let's see what we need to do. Can you talk to somebody about testing the asbestos in the cold storage? There's insulation blown on there. The school department should have somebody on contract who tests asbestos. There's a federal law that covers that. They may be able to do it at the same time.
Okay, so we need to find somebody to test for asbestos in the cold storage area.
Yeah, and if they can't do it, I mean,
What about the company we just used that did the house?
Cersei?
But they went in and tested. That's another, and they know the location.
sure.
The town's already approved them that they can do work. So just a suggestion if they can.
Yeah, anybody can do it, but I do think it makes sense because if we're putting together a budget, that could be relatively expensive if we want to take the asbestos out of there. And that, I don't think it's asbestos, but that and $6, like you said, will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, so.
Right. Okay. So I'll get in touch with Town Hall and ask them to help us find somebody to test for asbestos in the cold storage area. And we're looking at a 45-day timeline for the RFI to stay open.
Are we doing, because I think Brad mentioned 40, so is it 40 or 45?
Either one's fine. I mean, I think 45 is kind of normal, but
We can, we can see, what day we put it out, what day makes sense, Monday versus Friday, that kind of thing.
I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of people home and about, and it's a nice time to actually, it's almost like the save the date, like it's coming to just start to generate the positive vibe of that, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we've got 35 on the outset for asbestos just in the house. And then we wanted advertising money as well, so.
And then you've got your mowing starting in spring. spring,
Yeah,
summer, fall.
DPW is covering that, so as of right now, that wouldn't need to be a separate line item.
No, but we'd have to put it in,
Just-
we have to line item it for them so that they can put it in their budget. And we
Taken
recognize,
into account.
well, we didn't
Yeah.
do as much mowing because of the weather this year as well, with all the rain.
Mhm.
So that line item is gonna be greater if we wanna keep back the invasives and try and mow in some of those lanes.
And we would have DPW do it instead
Correct.
of Park and Rec.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we've talked about the timeline, which was the last item that town council weighed in on. And I think we're set on that. So in terms of the draft RFI, I think I've got everything I need. And I can circulate, I'll check in with questions and things regarding the parcels, Sarah, and the lots identified.
I did have a quick question. I know it talks about, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
It talks about if someone's gonna lease it, it would be for 30 years. I'm just wondering where 30 years came from.
No, up to.
Up to 30.
Up to 30.
Yeah, up to. That's the
Okay.
maximum.
Is there,
Yeah, that's
is that
what-
like a,
So I think.
Yeah,
we
that's
talked-
what's authorized.
5, it could be 10, it can be, that's all negotiable.
yeah, but if someone said they wanted it for longer, could they?
I don't think we can go
I
over
think there's a
30.
Standard, but you can do, you can have a different mechanism that, say, every 5 years pushes the 30 along, so it keeps clicking.
Like a rolling lease?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
So
that, if you're the responder and you want to put money into it, we can, I mean, both sides have an out. So 5 years is usually the standard, but I think we voted at town meeting to offer longer leases. So again, I think it's up for negotiation, but I would never rent this orchard with a 5-year renewing lease. I'd want, because it's gonna, the upfront time, effort, and money is high. So I'd want more of a guarantee than 5
So
years.
you're clicking in, so you have your base of whatever it's 10, 20, or whatever, but then as you get that, it starts to click,
Yeah, no, it's automatic renewal, I get it, but
rolling.
there may be some people come in and only want a 5-year. I don't think so, because there's so much upfront cost and energy. I think most people are gonna want a guarantee of more than
Yeah, I don't
5
think
years,
anyone's gonna start making a profit until like year 5 at least.
if ever.
Say 30.
Yeah, so yeah, 30 is as much as we can, as the board can do per that vote in 2015.
Yeah, and that's reasonable, I think. And again, that is, I think somebody said it's a negotiation point. We can figure out what people want, what they're comfortable with, what we're comfortable with, given their background and such.
Yeah, and I would note, well, that's another consideration actually. So that article, from that authorization in the Article 8, is pretty detailed and lists out, the parcels and the plan references and the acreage. So, I've run that through once, but I'll run it through again just to make sure that we've got it set out correctly in the RFI.
Okay, and I don't think we need it now, but I'm wondering whether that applies to all the self-help parcels as well. We do want to lease those. They might be on a different lease schedule.
Bringing that up, where conservation's doing a review, we've only found that the larger self-help lot is registered. So we're working on that. So the lower self-help we may not have taken funds to preserve the lower lot for the town. So that's in front of town council and conservation at the moment, where the parking lot is.
All right, well, another good reason to keep it somewhat vague on the self-help parcels at present. So you good, Karen, or do you need?
Yeah, I was just,
Where's it
Yeah.
go?
I'm here. I just wanted,
Karen, if you want,
Sorry.
that in the morning, if you want to go over lots or things like that. So,
yes, I will be able, yeah, let's talk offline about scheduling.
okay.
Right, and sorry to bring up a good point. Aside from the lots, we may want to mention the cottage and the other barns as well. So, because that will.
There's potential. I mean,
Yeah,
Charles.
but we need to list the buildings too, because that's a good point. So,
And Sarah, just for people who may not know what the self-help is, could you just explain it for people in the audience?
So, yes, and so we talked about it on the site walk as well. The town was able to capture funds to offset the price of the purchase price. And so one was APR and the other was called self-help, but now it's changed names. So people are like, self-help was not the best name for that. So, but the town did receive 250,000 for self-help land.
And can it be farmed or is it general use? Can you build like a new house on it? Can you build a barn on
It's a
it?
great question. You cannot build like a house on it, just like ag, you can't build on that.
But you could build like a shed or a barn.
So, yeah.
And
So the self-help is actually, I think it is in, and Karen, you might know, I think that the registered self-help document is on the town website, as is the APR, I think.
so the self-help, is it a conservation restriction where you have some,
It's a state restriction, Commonwealth restriction,
okay.
so.
Is there a flexibility? I know like some conservation restrictions, you can farm them, some of them you can't, depending how it's worded.
So we can use that one.
Was it a
Okay.
conservation restriction or a municipal?
Yeah.
Land restriction, what's the difference between a municipal land restriction and a conservation?
Conservation is a lease, so, and I'm sure that municipal's a lease as well. It has to be passive recreation, it can't be like, you can't put in tennis courts or golf course or things like that. So
Right, but I've
kind of
worked
follow
with the
this.
Trunk Valley, Sudbury Valley trustees, I worked with them. They had some parcels that were restricted, they allowed ag on, and some didn't.
Mhm.
And they were looking to update further ones so they could put appropriate ag buildings and that sort of thing. So I guess
I'll look-
if we haven't written the restriction yet, we may want to leave it somewhat open. So it can be farmed, and I would suggest
Well,
wall farm buildings.
yeah, the document's very specific of what can be in there, but I'll have to look
Okay.
and see if you can put like an auxiliary. on
It
it.
can differ.
Yeah.
Such as Jones Field, there was a choice of doing APR or CR. CR was much more flexible.
Yeah.
So that was what was done, but I think it allows it.
Yeah.
And,
As long as it allows it, because I do know that some
well,
don't. So,
it may differ. And
Yeah.
I'll double check and.
Yeah.
This is
research that.
done way back, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it was.
Anything else, Karen?
Nope,
Okay, thanks for all the work on this. You're doing a great job.
thank you. Appreciate all the input.
Yeah, I forget whether it was Jen or
The advertising?
yeah, the review of the responses and the advertising. So let's do the advertising first.
Okay, so the advertising, we were looking at some things to do a little bit more outside of the box, and I checked on two of them. One was edible Worcester and edible Boston, and that, I don't know if you guys are all familiar, great publication. They really focus on everything local, the farmers, butchers, bakers, business people. Anyway, it's a great demographic. So they have, I found this really interesting. On their print magazine, the annual reader reach is over 500,000. And they have a 4-time pass around rate, which is pretty high for a magazine. They're published 4 times a year. That's on their print and digital. They have 13,000 Facebook. Instagram is about 22,000. And 96% of their readers reported taking action as a result of something they had seen in edible Boston, edible Worcester. So it's a really fabulous publication. And in terms of how expensive it is, it's really not too bad. Looking at the different rates, a quarter page, basically twice. So they have 4 issues a year. And they've got spring, summer, fall, and winter, and trying to line up with what our timeline is. I think it would be prudent to advertise in spring and in summer. And a quarter page times 2 would be about $3,300. So I didn't think that was too bad.
Is that both digital and print? So all
Yes,
inclusive?
digital is included when you have print, and the artwork for that would be due for January, or for the spring issue would be due January 20th. And Karen did some great work on the QR code there. So that is something that we can also use in the ad. And that was something suggested. I spoke with the advertising people about what we were trying to do. We thought we'd come at it from perhaps an editorial standpoint, but that's already closed. We were a little too late in reaching out about that one. For the spring issue, for summer, or when we post the RFP, what we could do is put in a QR code there so somebody could click on that, snap on that, and it would take them right to,
So they can edit the second advertisement?
yeah, as long as it's a minor edit. But the beauty is the digital piece, you know, can be changed anytime.
Is the readership largely consumers or farmers?
Both, they had, let me see, they had some great,
I've advertised there before, they give you a bunch of free magazines too.
oh, and Will's been in it. So that's been kind of neat. Hold on here, where did they have it?
If we don't have the layout done for the print for the 20th, can we still do digital?
I didn't
updates?
ask that.
Okay.
I didn't ask that, but I didn't think it would take us that long to put something together to have done by January 20th.
Okay.
I think that would be
Hmm.
very quick.
So we'll miss the RFI, but we'll get the RFR.
No, we can, well, it can be digital.
Okay.
We can have the link to something. So if we
But
by January 20th, if we get them artwork that is inclusive of a link, then we're
Okay.
fine.
so
Yeah.
they won't have as long as the RFR, or RFI, but they'll still have that.
Correct.
You
Okay.
still get in
Correct.
front of those eyeballs.
Right.
But-
And then for the summer
Sorry.
issue, we can that to the RFP. If we need to. That deadline is April 26th. The distribution starts June 15th. So on the spring issue, artwork's due January 20th. It starts distributing March 15th. So that's really, that first one is critical.
Yeah, but the RFI is gonna go out for 45 days.
Yeah, we've already missed it.
Yeah, so we really can only advertise for
The
the
RFP.
Right.
So
Okay. Did you contact the Worcester Business Journal as well?
I did. Their rates were similar. They're a little bit more expensive and they were not as receptive to doing an editorial on this and a link or something like that. They had suggested being in the real estate section. So I didn't find that to be
Per Will
terribly
suggested,
helpful.
I spoke to Guy Stuchek, who's a writer for Lancaster Farming. It's all the Northeast, right? And they're out of Pennsylvania, aren't they?
Lancaster Farmers, but I think, Country Folks is the Northeast, or, yeah, similar, publication.
Yeah, but I think they cover the Northeast. It's largely a farming or, he's really interested in writing an editorial on it as well as posting it. It wouldn't cost us anything. It largely goes to farmers. He was talking to his editor Monday and I got a follow up, so.
What was that publication?
Lancaster Farming.
No.
That was a good suggestion. Thank you. And then I think,
other paid, like land, farmland, like real estate businesses.
I mean, Sotheby's, I mean, but it's mostly the horse people. You know, a lot of it's word of mouth or New England Farmland Finder or, you know, Land for Good and those guys,
Do
so.
you have those links? Cause we put those all on one sheet.
Amy put together a good list of them.
Yeah,
So,
we had done that earlier.
Yeah, we
You
did
know,
that.
you had all the ones I was thinking, New England Farm Finder, I don't, let's not skimp on that one. That one will need pictures, but a lot of people go to that one.
I'm pretty sure that was on the list.
Yeah, it was, but that's a good one, I know. I mean, I don't know, I look at it once a week and I'm never in the market, so.
Yeah, does it cost to do New England Farm Finder or Land for Good? Or do we need to?
I don't think there's a cost for either one.
Okay, I'll double check.
I
that.
think on that sheet, I updated all that on our first go around, right?
Okay.
Which ones cost, which ones were not,
You know,
people that were willing to help.
Yeah, we can always double check that.
Land for Good will do it for free. I'm pretty sure New England Farmland Finder is free.
Might try LoopNet.
What's up?
LoopNet.
LoopNet?
It's like a commercial version of Zillow.
Okay, cool.
So I don't know if they charge, but
LOOP.
LOOP, yeah.
And the main organic farmers.
Oh, MOFGA.
Martha.
Mafka?
Yeah.
I mean, you might want to try, I mean,
No, but
NOPA first, I mean,
I'm just saying if they're free, that's what they've all states.
but I mean, you can send it, all the farming organizations, send it the organic associations, Farm Bureau, there's a bunch of them out there.
Those are New England berry growers, there's a whole bunch of.
You remember, right? MADF, farmers.
Dates, Brad, did we, on the agenda, like dates for future meetings too?
Oh, that's at the end.
Okay.
It's on there. So the House for me, so anything else on either the, review of the responses or getting it out there? And one of you had asked about a timeline for review. I think we just do it as quickly as we get them in.
Yeah, do we want to talk about how we're going to do it though?
Karen, that's a
Now
good
rather
question.
than later?
Can there be, so can you outline, so when this is posted and someone responds, what email is that going to? And can there be a second person on that email chain so that nothing's kind of lost?
So I think we would put it out in our procurement site. And that would have its own response section.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we never really knew what happened the last time this went out. And I would like to just and I'm a trusting person, but I want to make sure that there's two people that are reading the emails.
Yeah, the other option maybe is, I was wondering if we could just set up a different, Littleton MA, a separate address, and that can CC to whoever we want, or auto forward to whomever we want. I'll ask about that.
That would be appreciated.
Who is reviewing it? Is it us? Is it the select board? Is it,
Kitty?
what's the guy's name?
I mean, it's
Riley
us.
or whatever what's that?
It's us, I think. Sorry, I've got a cat knocking
Okay.
things over.
Is everybody
yeah, it's
clear on
us.
that? Because I know we have some new folks in there and we've had some friction on some other issues with some of the folks.
Yeah, I mean, I would like a
Um,
chance to review them, even though we're not gonna filter anyone out.
Well, who's reviewing it and who's making decisions? Do we make recommendations to the selectmen? How's this working?
Yes, at the end, well, historically, at the end, if you have more than one, you can push them all forward, but we have to keep the ball rolling. So if somebody submits something, we all agreed that we were gonna try and, while we're working at weather, get them out to show them the property as well, to come up with dates that they can see. But if we only have one person,
But I guess my question is it clear upstairs that we're reviewing these? Or does the select board want us reviewing these? Does the new town administrator, the deputy town administrator, they plan on reviewing this? So,
I'll put
we've had
that
some
on our
unclear
next
roles
agenda.
on some of the things I've dealt with, so.
Okay, I'll put a discussion on orchard review process on the next select board agenda.
My suggestion would be we review it, we've been embroiled in it, we've taken the comments and we review it and make recommendations to folks. But if other people envision a different process, it'd be good to know that now.
So what I have heard from the folks that I've discussed it with is consistent with that, but they're expecting us
Okay.
to come with a recommendation. But I'll put it on the select board's agenda to make sure that my understanding is correct.
thank you.
Can we have it put on to have somebody in this group be CC'd on the responses?
I assume Karen, you'll be on there, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'll find out. I'll find out
Okay.
what's going to happen on the technical side of the email distribution and what we can do. I understand that we want to have more than one point of failure. So I'll figure out what we can get done, and then I'll
Yeah,
report
I
back and we can decide if that's adequate or if we want to try to figure out something else.
Yeah, that was helpful with the appraisal because there were different understandings of what was going on. And so it was helpful that I was on there. It could have been any one of us, but I
Yeah.
think it's important that somebody from the group be on there.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, anything else on the RFI?
Not from me.
Okay,
I would like to make a motion that we support the RFI as amended.
I second it.
So the vote has been motioned. and
All in
seconded.
favor?
So we have to do a roll call vote. Will,
Well,
Karen,
Aye.
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously, absent Matthew. Okay, so unless there's anything else, final agenda item, any other business before we get onto the meeting schedule?
Do we want to take questions from the audience yet?
We've got some new folks there. You guys have any thoughts, questions, concerns? Don?
No.
No? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe this is the wrong question to ask, but if it gets leased, is there any version of a price for it? And if it gets sold to somebody, is there any, is there a number anywhere?
So we had an
Sorry,
appraisal. We
excuse me, sorry,
So-
I need to interrupt. Could we, please get a name and an address?
Yourself, your name and your address, please. Thank you.
Yes, and
There you
there's
go.
working a own house at 60 Nagog Orchard, which is right across from the orchard, kind of kitty corner to the farm stand.
Yep.
So I talk to people about it all the time, my friends in Concord and stuff, and they're like, well, what's.
Yeah. So we had the appraiser in, so we don't, and the reason we got an appraiser was to figure out that what would be a reasonable price if we were to sell it. Right now, it does not include the house or the barn, which are probably worth more than the whole rest of the property altogether. So he's gonna get back to us. It's cheap, and it's gonna surprise people how inexpensive it is, but it's about $2,000 an acre is what I expect on the APR land. Now, keep in mind, that's restricted. You can never do anything with it again, so you lose all that development value. So we're only looking probably about 2,000 on the farmland. It may come in differently. That's why we get an appraiser. We're not sure where the house and the barn will come in, and we haven't jumped through the hoops to try to protect that yet, since we don't know if we're gonna sell it or lease it or whatever. That would go higher, but we are trying to protect that. Anytime you put a restriction on it, it lowers the price. That's the whole point, right?
Okay, so 2,000 an acre for, that's the lease?
What's that? Oh, no, the lease would be, that we haven't figured out yet. The lease will be pretty inexpensive. But for sale, it's only about $2,000 an acre for the farmland. The lease, we'd have to work it out. It depends what they wanted to do and the property and that sort of thing.
Brad, do you want to clarify that that's ag to ag? You're selling to ag, not to the, so if the town sells to ag, it's going to another ag.
Yeah, so the APR land has to be in agriculture, which is why it's the only $2,000. So it's in agriculture. It's gonna stay in agriculture. It would take a 2/3 vote of the legislature to take it out, and nobody has any interest in doing that. So it'll be agriculture again, and that's why it's only 2,000 an acre versus 250 or more.
And that action is Article 97. So if you want to look that up, that's in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and then I think with Article 97, the first is there's a bill, and that has to have a super majority.
We have to have 2/3 of the legislature.
Yeah, and then you have to have no law, so you have to be able to find another piece of land, 49.5 acres, to swap it in.
Yeah,
And
anyway, we have no interest in selling it, so it's moved. Yeah,
As not agriculture.
Yeah, so it has to be sold to agriculture,
Yeah.
stay agriculture, and
Yeah.
does it have to then be, is there, I mean, obviously you guys figured this all out, but, does it have to be farmed and worked all the time, like, does it have to?
so under the APR rules, they've told us, and this isn't written anywhere, they would like to see at least half of it in production, half the APR land in production. Now, it hasn't been, and theoretically, they could come in and find somebody else to farm it. I'd be happy if they did, but it's really, they're happy to let us do it as well. So about half of it has to be in production. So suppose we leased it and the person never put it in production, one, that would violate whatever lease we wrote, and the state could also come in and say, no, you gotta do it. They don't often do that, but they could. Now, the type of production can also vary. Right now, it's in orchard, obviously, but it could go to anything in agriculture, really. I wouldn't expect livestock, at least on the corner parcel by the reservoir, but,
And no cannabis,
what's that?
no cannabis.
No cannabis.
She asked me that today.
So you can't do cannabis because some APRs you can, but there was, this was purchased with federal money as well.
Mhm.
The federal farm and ranch land protection money. So since it's illegal federally, they frown on cannabis. So hemp would be okay. And they don't allow horses unless it's for breeding, which is unlikely. And that's a state rule. Yes, sir.
Ed Quakenall, 8 Long Lake Road. Does a greenhouse range, would that be allowed?
So you could do a greenhouse, though, with the APR restriction, there's only a certain amount of the land that can be impervious.
Uh-huh.
So, and that's a USDA thing, so you'd have to go to NRCS and get permission to go over a certain percentage of impervious surfaces, which would include a greenhouse.
Yeah.
So they could put greenhouses up there, but it is unlikely they're gonna cover the whole thing.
Yeah, and it would not be open for horticultural production, just agriculture.
No, horticultural production, if you're doing perennials or flowers for commercial production, that's agriculture in the state.
Forestry as well.
And NRCS, for people who don't know, is a Natural Resource and Conservation Services.
It's a USDA agency, but they have, regulatory authority over the land that they put money into. Don, do you?
Yeah, so Don McGovern, 43 Foster. So since you're doing RFI to get, innovative possibilities, will the people that express interest have a chance to see who else has expressed interest? So they may be able to do a partnership. That is the question to ask when you're asking about who's reviewing.
I know, Karen, is it's all open public record, right? So if somebody puts in a response, anybody can see it? You're on mute, sorry. Yeah, she's saying yes. So Don, it's all subject to it's not freedom of information, it's federal public record law, so all they have to do is request it and they'll get it.
Okay, great.
Any other questions?
Anyone on Zoom have any questions? You have to raise your hand
And take off mute.
and take off mute. I don't think we have any questions.
Okay, so absent any other business and meeting schedule, so the next scheduled date we're to be here is January 3rd. I won't be in the country. I don't have to be here, but somebody else is gonna have to deal with it because I won't be in a position to be able to. So do you want to meet the 3rd? Do we have enough to do on the 3rd? I do know we need to come up with that budget for what we want to look at, do for maintenance.
Yeah, no, we can do the January 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay,
Will,
Farm Bureau meeting.
well, as long as Matt, because then we don't have a quorum if,
No, all you need is matter, Karen, you need 4.
okay.
so we need
So-
4.
Yeah.
We wanna go for 3/17, like 31, just try to get back on the same schedule.
Yeah, we're already on that schedule. I've already got the rooms all, holidays and stuff, but we already have the room booked for the 3rd, the 17th and the 31st.
Karen, does that work for you?
Yeah, it should. I'll have PTA conflicts every now and then, but it is what
No, we
it is.
agreed several weeks ago to try to stick to a regular schedule for folks, so. We can't make a quorum or there's something really important we need everybody there for, we can shift it, but I think it's probably best to try to stick with that.
Yeah.
All right, so you will send out the agenda and I can send you that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
So it would ultimately be exciting on the 13th to really kind of have a review of where we would have already posted.
I'm sorry, 13th?
I mean, the 3rd,
Yeah.
January 3rd, to then be able to say, this is where everything's been posted, and then we can try and find other areas as well.
Yeah, and Karen, I have kind of an ethical question. So if I know people who might be interested in, can I just send it to them?
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
as long as I'm not profiting from it, right?
correct.
Okay.
The more the merrier.
Okay. Absent any other business, I'll entertain a motion to, sorry, Don.
Well, and I would hope other people would send it to people they think might be interested.
Oh, yeah.
So will it be available, so easy format for us to send or?
As
link?
soon as it's on the website, as soon as Karen gives us that link, we want it
Okay.
to.
The lawyers established the format, so I can't guarantee it will be easy, but it will be accessible.
We can always make a bit.ly if we need to.
Okay, so absent any other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
8/17.
Okay, thank
Sorry,
you.
technically we should do a roll call vote.
We can take this stuff too far. I don't think anybody wants to stay here. So I think we're good. Anyway, have a
right.
good night. Thanks, everybody.